August 1987, Metroid came out.
Unbelievable.
Isn't that insane?
Yeah, and Kid Icarus was around that time too. I think those like launched at the same time.
Embarrassment of riches.
But Metroid is another game for me, at least. Like I got it when I rented it when I was a kid, and like I played it, but it was really, really hard to figure out. And I love for that one though that Nintendo Power had codes in their classified information section that really helped. There's Justin Bailey. And I can't remember the other ones.
I feel like that is something that's completely lost to the world. I mean, I guess it's like it's now on the internet, but that sense of just things spreading slowly between your friends, kind of like Street Fighter 2, where you found out about secret moves and stuff like that, and it was only shared through, like you said, tip lines and like just on the playground comparing notes. Like, do you have this? Do you have this? Metroid was another one of those where I was like mainly a bystander until like later in life because I didn't have an NES at home. My friends all had them. My parents got me a 7800. Oh, sad story. I'll tell it later.
There were lots of good games with 7800. That was actually
I love the system.
Totally legitimate system.
But I didn't get an NES until later. And so things like Metroid, I was always like, it was just a watching kind of experience.
You go to a friend's house and watch it.
It's an interesting way to experience it, though, because you watch somebody go through this. It's not even a story. It's like, I'm just going to explore around and hope for the best.
And you can direct them. You'd be like, you should do this.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I mean, and visually, it was absolutely the opposite, where Zelda is the Hyrule fantasy, right, fantasy setting, and then Metroid is sort of this dark sci-fi space, alone. But they both explored the same concept, and that it was a world you had to explore and find secrets and find power-ups and use those to gain access to different places, to fight bosses. I will say that it's interesting to me because, Miyamoto's influence on Zelda will always be remembered, but Metroid never really got tied to, at least early Metroid, didn't get tied to any one creator, even though, important people like Gunpei Yokoi were involved in that. That was, and Sakamoto, I think, is listed as an artist on that game. But just in terms of, like, it wasn't someone as prominent as Miyamoto, but in a lot of ways, Metroid was still playing with a lot of cool ideas. Some of them it executed really well. Some you can say it didn't quite as well.
Yeah.
But definitely a special game.
It was one of the first games to feature a female protagonist, even though it kind of seems like Nintendo of America didn't even realize that, because the instruction manual refers to Samus as he multiple times.
Well, and if you think about that, and then you think about the Chozo statues, which weren't really called that at the time, and then everything about the game is just Alien. They just made a game based on Alien that's really good and captures what Alien is like about being alone and frightened.
Even the self-destruct escape sequence at the end is from Alien.
And when you play that game, you can you can really see what you need, what tweaks needed to be made to make that game like super universally accessible and more popular. And one of them that always drives me crazy is that when you put in your code and you come back to the game, you have to refill your life bar.
Yeah.
So you have to go to a little crater spitting out enemies and just shoot them over and over and over and over and over.
I feel like that there was such a high tolerance for those kinds of activities in early games.
Totally.
Where like if you put that dynamic in a game now, people would be like, "This is broken. This is horrible. I would never, you never want to do this." You just accepted it. You're like, "I'm going to rent this for however long I have, or buy it, and I'm going to sit here with just this game and figure it out."
Another game, you had to make maps. You just have to make them.
Or you got the official Nintendo Player's Guide. They had laid out all the maps for you.
Yeah,
absolutely.
The music, and I say Zelda had like 4 great songs, and that was it.
But the music,
Metroid has less, I think, maybe 3, maybe 4, all amazing.
The music is incredible in Metroid. The composer Tanaka intentionally wanted to make no distinction between music and sound effects in the game. So like sometimes you're hearing sound effects that kind of sound musical, sometimes vice versa. And it's
like
also
in the elevator.
So good. And then he also makes really cool use of silence, which was totally unheard of in
so cool. And you can hear footsteps.
Yeah, it's so cool.
A very ambient game. And what's interesting about Hip Tanaka specifically is he wasn't like where Koji Kondo went to music school. Like he was a trained musician before he got a job at Nintendo, and that's the guy responsible for the Super Mario Brothers theme, the Zelda themes that we all know and love. Hip Tanaka was music was a hobby, and sound design was a hobby, but it wasn't really his core focus. And he turned around this amazing soundtrack. Like you go to some of the locations in Metroid, and those bits just get stuck in your head. Those loops of like really good 30 seconds of music.
And then he scored some of the most famous Nintendo games of the last 3 decades. I mean, he's still doing stuff.
Yeah, but it's interesting that they gave him the power to do that, and that was an R&D 1 game, which was a big deal at Nintendo. At least in that R&D 1 was behind this was the part of Nintendo that was behind the toy making aspects of, and making the Game Boy and sort of figuring out the best uses of technology, the experiments, if you will, all came out of R&D1.
Metroid, the word Metroid is apparently a combination of the words Metro and Android.
Yeah.
I don't get where Metroid
I don't either.
Metro
So
comes
Not so
like,
much the cityscape.
Yeah.
It could be that, or it's probably just a cool word.
Yeah.
There's so much ambiguity about even where Donkey Kong and stuff came from. It's
Yeah, that's
It's
true.
difficult to figure that stuff out.
Metroid's legacy is clear. Today, Metroidvania is a whole genre.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is
Yeah.
Castlevania out?